Slightly different video this week because I'm looking back on 5 years of Silk Helix, why I set it up, what I've learned along the way, and kind of where we're going now and in the future. So if you've not seen my videos before, I'm Jenefer, I'm the founder of Silk Helix. In this video, you're going to find out all about what that actually means and a little bit around kind of what I've learned, what it is to run a HR consultancy and indeed a small business. So join me. So why did I set up Silk Helix? I set up Silk Helix in 2019, so just before the pandemic, and at the time it was really around, I've been working in consultancy for a long time for some of the really big players, and I was getting a bit fed up with the really fixed, almost sausage factory style of working where we didn't really get to know our clients that well. We were often advising on situations where we hadn't been involved in that situation before, so we were picking up things without really knowing background context, and things like training we were doing that but not a huge amount. And to be honest, I was getting a bit bored in those kind of roles and just felt like there was something better. I could do things better, I could do things in a different way. Now, I've learned a lot about myself along the way and a lot about the things that I do well, that are my strengths, the things that I could really do with other people, and I do now have other people helping me with. And yeah, looking back, that really is why I think those roles weren't fitting me and weren't right for me. So I set up Silk Helix really with this view that I wanted to be in a situation where I could work one-on-one with clients, where it was much more relationship, so much more I knew their business. They were talking to me, so whenever they picked up the phone to say, we've got this issue with this employee, I knew the background, I knew how the business worked, I knew the types of job roles that they'd got, I knew the expectations, the culture of the business owner. And often when I was talking to business owners, it wasn't just limited to employment law, to HR, but it would go out a bit wider than that, because when we're talking about our people in our business, it often does. It's not limited just to that individual. It's the whole business. And then, of course, there's other things around sort of business strategy and direction and changing things and redundancies. And, of course, when the pandemic hit, there was a lot more of that kind of thing going on, and talking to those clients about how they changed the direction of their business, where they were pivoting, where they were looking at other things they needed to do, and the changes that were going to come out of that. There was a lot of that throughout that time. So that was really kind of exciting, interesting. Obviously didn't have no clue when I started my business that just over 6 months later we'd be hitting a global pandemic. But that really did add to kind of some of the sort of excitement and interest. And for me as well, a lot of the opportunities around sort of learning and developing the business. And actually that was where this was born, the idea of kind of YouTube and creating content in that way, because one of the things I really love doing is face-to-face training, in-person training. And of course, the pandemic shut that down completely, and it took a little while to come back. So this was kind of a way for me to be able to really kind of share what I would do, what I'm passionate about, in a different way, in a way that I hadn't really thought about before. So for that, I have the pandemic to thank. I'm not sure many of us have got much to thank the pandemic for, but for me, there was some good that came out of it. So what I found in more recent years is that training has become a much bigger part of my business. I still love doing the advice work. I love working sort of one-to-one directly with clients on specific situations, writing contracts, handbooks, the things that are bespoke to what a company needs. But the training is what I really love doing, and what I discovered really is that was where I was really limited in my previous roles, where we weren't given any budgets. It was just like, you've got the expertise, you've got PowerPoint, go away, do a training. Whereas now, my training kit is huge. I have boxes and boxes of stuff that is there to pick and choose the different things that I use for different training topics. And those resources are what makes the training interesting, engaging. It's what makes it fun for me to deliver as much as it is for the people that are in the room with me. And one of the things I love about training, and of course I'm learning as well, so those interactions I'm having with people, the challenge of being put on the spot, asked a question and thinking, oh, okay, how would I deal with that? Working it out, that I love all of that. And some of that I also get from running this channel, because I'm doing the research, I'm learning about the different topics as I go along, building my skills and my knowledge. And you may well have noticed some change in direction of my content and going a little bit more into neurodiversity and understanding the impact of that in the workplace. And that really is the future, probably the next 5 years, I'm guessing, of my business. And partly I can say the next 5 years because of where I am as a mum outside of work, because clearly running Silk Helix isn't the only thing I do. I'm also mum to a neurodivergent child. I actually discovered I'm neurodivergent myself as well, just to add into the mix. And so there's been a huge journey around that in the last almost 2 years, where I've really been learning, understanding what that means for my child, for me, and then of course starting to see how that impacts the work environment, but also realising how it's already impacted my training and my advice without me actually realising it, and realising that a lot of the training I give around management styles and things like that was already taken into account some of, by no means all, but some of the neurodiversity stuff, because I was recognising the impact of different managers on me and what good management meant compared to bad management for me personally, not realising that some of that had neurodivergent condition links, and training around it and picking up just generally a lot of the things that are good for being a good manager, because a lot of the things that are good for your neurodivergent colleagues will actually be good for everybody. There's benefits across the board often when we take into account some of these sort of techniques and styles. So realising that there's a lot more to learn and a lot more that could be improved. So some things that have changed, some things in the way I train, the things I say that might be a little bit different to where they were a few years ago as I'm developing that. And now I'm looking into developing even further into that area of neurodiversity and looking at the qualifications in that add on to my qualifications in HR and employment law. So that really, for me, I think it's a really big thing that we're going to be seeing a lot more around the impacts at work, because we're starting to, of course, realise that people are neurodivergent. Actually, I can look back now on so many of the cases I've advised on and think, God, I deal with that differently now. That was probably an undiagnosed neurodivergent situation where we didn't know, the individual didn't know. And so that's changed things hugely. So for me, this whole journey, 5 years of being in business, being in Silk Helix, has really taken me on a learning journey throughout the whole thing. And I remember starting my business, and this will be kind of my top tip, I think, to anybody that is starting a HR consultancy right now. The first thing I did was went out and bought a load of sort of HR books, employment law books and other courses and things. And it was like, oh, my knowledge isn't good enough. I've been consulting for nearly 20 years by this point, but I was still like, my knowledge isn't quite good enough. I'm like, I need more. I need to know more about employment law. And very, very quickly I learned that actually I do know my stuff. Clearly I'm always learning. Clearly there's always new things to come out. But actually it was the running the business. It was the marketing. It was all of that side, which actually I really enjoyed. And as a HR professional, I think really added then to how I gave advice and how I worked with business owners, because it meant I was thinking about the people problems and the people, all the kind of people stuff in line with, well, what does the whole business need? Because now I'm thinking like a business owner. I'm thinking about what is the priorities for the business, how do we run a business, I'm thinking about marketing, I'm thinking about particularly service industries where what the people do and how you market it and how you get retention, and all these things are so interlinked. And all of a sudden the way I gave advice really, really changed, and therefore the way I trained really changed. And then, of course, that learning then, as I say, developed into learning, understanding more around neurodivergence and how people operate more generally, because that takes you into a whole load of things around brain development, particularly a lot of the things around apprentices and how we would support apprentices in the workplace and how I support clients who've got apprentices, those kind of things as well. There's a whole load of things there that come into it. So one of the big things I think in HR is that actually it's not just the employment law, it's all the other that really needs to marry into that. And that's been a huge piece of learning for me in terms of being a HR consultant. And certainly if you're looking at starting your own HR consultancy right now, that would be what I would be saying. Like, that's my advice. That is where to look for your learning. Trust your gut, trust your HR stuff, because you probably know that bit, but actually all the other stuff will knock on and make you better at the HR stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed my content over the last few years. Please do subscribe, comment if you've enjoyed it. If you're back, if you're returning, please comment. It's always good to hear if people are finding my content useful. If you've got any questions you want answered in future videos, put them in the comments too, and I may well use that as inspiration for future videos. And I hope that you will continue on this journey with me and find this useful into the future as well.